What is the problem? Where were you in the last lecture? I know. I'm saying why you were absent. That is my question. I know you were absent.
It's recording.
I know. Yes. You were here. I know. What was the last lecture? Before that, we covered the client server architecture. Define client server. I know you were present. Define client server architecture. Define client server architecture. Do you need translator? Yes. Client server architecture. Mr. Khalid.
Client server is one server connected to many devices.
How to define client server architecture?
Medium to transfer data between PCs using server.
The type of distributed system where there is a client and a server, and the server must have all the service and
Client server architecture divides the processing burden into two separate processes. We have client side process and we have server side process. Divides the processing burden into two processes. Client side process and the server side process. So we have client server architecture and we have types of client server architecture. We discussed the types of client server architecture.
Here to be.
Single tier, not tier. Muhammad. Single tier architecture.
The application and the data and one
Security is like one server with many. There,
Mm.
one layer,
Mm.
and the server.
Excel or Access installed on the server and clients are accessing the copies. Two tier. process for the client and the other will do for the server. Hmm? The front end and the back end concept was introduced. So achieve the security and also the processing is improved. Server. Logic also has one security server. Database also has one security server. That was the last lecture. It's an architectural pattern that separates the application logic from the business logic. Main examples to implement MVC are using Java, Microsoft .NET Framework, Smalltalk, Ruby on Rails, ROR, and many more. MVC was first implemented using Smalltalk language in 1979, but it got popularity in 2000. and after that. But the idea was introduced in 1979.
Too much time.
Why? You know, in mathematics we have Fourier transformation. You know Fourier transformation? You know Fourier transformation?
4 years.
Fourier transformation. It is used to convert analog to digital and digital to analog. It was introduced in 17th century. It was implemented in 1940s after the manufacturing of the computer. After more than 200 years. You are saying why in 79 it was introduced, why it got popularity?
I mean, why they just
It depends on the trends, on the needs, on the requirements. Because 79 you don't have web applications, no internet, no concept was there. So now you have distributed environment and you have distributed applications, now they need it. So now they are using. It doesn't matter when the thing was introduced but it has value just as a history, as a background that when it was introduced, why it was introduced. Let's see an example we have using Java. What is model? What is view? What is controller? We have three components: model, view, and the controller. Do you know what is a model, what is view, what is controller? When I discussed in the last lecture, after that nobody tried to find out. Huh? Model is like a battery. Pattern. Yes, this is pattern. MVC is a pattern. That is the reason I am discussing. It's architectural pattern. Yes, you know what is model, what is view, what is controller? Yeah? You never tried. I know how much busy you are. I can see. I know most of you. The time, the way you spent. And sometime I ask you, anyway, model has your business logic. Model has your business logic. And the view has your processing logic. View has your processing logic. And C is the controller, which is like a compiler or like a manager. Like manager, mediator, mentor. So if you view wants to access the model, it must be through the controller. And model will provide some data, it is again passed through the controller. So controller is in between the model and the view. Like when you are using shopping cart on the Amazon, MVC architecture is implemented there. Yes. Yes. When you use shopping cart using the Amazon, MVC architecture is implemented there. When you are adding the items to the shopping cart, you are selecting and you are adding the items. The business logic is coming from the model. Business logic is coming from the model. And processing logic is on the interface where you are selecting the items to add in the shopping cart. and control is hidden there to control the all traffic, the input and the output from the model and the view. So that data is not saved in the database, it is just at the client end. Just at the client end. So model is storing all the values of the user without storing in the data. Without storing in the data. And controller is there to monitor. Like you have Java application, the interface is the JSP. And logic is component. In Java we call them, the component of Java is called a controller, and you have servlet that has the model. So JSP is the interface, bean the logic, the controller is there, servlet is the controller, and the bean as the model. So in this way you are operating the application for processing. Let me show you. User interacts with the user interface like pressing a button. The controller handles the input event from the user interface, often a register handler or callback. The controller accesses the model, possibly update it in a way according to the user action. So controller updates user shopping cart like the Amazon. So controller is responsible to update the model. View uses the model to generate an appropriate user interface. For example, view produces a screen listing the shopping cart items. The view gets its own data from the model. Model has no direct knowledge of the view. So model is independent. Whatever the model will contain the value, it is passed through the controller, whatever the want. So controller is like a check. You want to update it or you don't want to update. So this is an example, and then you have the observer pattern is there to allow the model to indirectly notify the interested parties, potentially including the view, the user of a change. Any question regarding the processing of view, model and the controller? Again, like when you go to the Amazon, that is a view for you. Now, when you select an item, model will update through the controller. Controller will update that this item is added in the shopping cart. Now, when you select OK, done, that process, that data from the model will pass to the next component regarding the order confirmation or whatever. Up to that time, it is on the client end. Nothing has gone to the server. Yeah, yes, on the client end. In the JSP. Yes. Yes. The controller is the servlet which is controlling the whole processing through the interface to the model. It's like a manager who is monitoring all the information. Whatever the information he wants to update, he will update in the model. So model has your business logic. Whatever the item, price, all things, quantities, number of items plus the cost of that, and tax, sales tax or whatever, shopping and the shipping charges, all are there. Yes, clear? So model view separation is view has the GUI and model is the business logic, and we have the GUI classes in separate component. The Java listener is there, action listener, and then are called when an event such as button you push. They call methods in the model to perform action such as get data and may retrieve information from the model or change its state, shut down and open the new screen and dialog for the user. Yes, exactly. Event is the controller. When you press the button, automatically the controller will be activated, it will pass the information to the model. Or you click, again it's event. So controller will be initiated, activated, it will update the model. Is it clear to everybody? So this is another example of 3-tier patterns. So we are using the different layers. The callbacks are there. We already discussed the call by value and call by reference, and register handler is there. So we have application interfaces, major processes, domain classes, mechanism, and you have the services. These are the layer architecture we have. These are showing the different processes, like we have different actions. Because at the same time, many users are activating or using the application. So you have multiple processes at the time, or the threads are there in process. Yes, exactly. You can see the 3-tier architecture is further divided into n-tier, and now we have the MVC layer is there at the application level. Then you have the distributed architecture, and the client and the WAN environment is there, LAN environment is there. You have Corba, DCOM, and we have EJB. Have you heard about Corba? These are the popular frameworks we have. MTS. Anybody knows the MTS? Microsoft Transaction Server. Microsoft Transaction Server for e-commerce, e-business. We have Corba, we have Beans, we have Domino architecture, we have SAP, Delphi, Fort, Visual Basic. These are the architectures we have. These are the frameworks we have. Corba. Anybody knows about the Corba? Common Object Request Broker Architecture. Should I write on the board? No. It's architecture. It's distributed architecture. No. Corba. Common Object Request Broker Architecture. Common Object Request broker architecture. Corba divides the environment or the tools or the specifications, architecture, different vendors. So you can have as one application divides the architecture of different programming languages developed by different vendors so that they can intercommunicate with each other. Corba divides the architecture, specifications of different programming languages developed by different vendors so they can intercommunicate with each other to achieve reusability. To achieve reusability. Remember, when we cover reuse, mean the COBOL, Pascal, C, Fortran function can be used with Java, with .NET, with PHP, using Corba. Corba was introduced by an organization, its name is OMG, Object Management Group. OMG, Object Management Group. They introduced Corba to divide the architecture of different programming languages introduced by different vendors to intercommunicate, to achieve reusability. So you can call any function of any language through any language. Java to C, C to Java. C is structured, Java is object oriented. C++ to .NET. That vendor is different. Goerland. Here Microsoft. PHP to .NET. COBOL, Fortran to PHP, Java, any language. So you can have the platform independence. You can have platform independence. And whatever the function you develop in the company, you can reuse it as many times as you like. Increase the reusability. Yes. Otherwise, it's a problem to use C function with .NET. C is different, .NET is different, Java is different, PHP is different, Perl, Cold Fusion, different. Corba divides them, divides their architectures so they can communicate with each other. You can call and respond. Client and the server. Client method to server and server method to client. Client will request to provide the data, server method will process it, provide the output for the input for the client. Now Corba is the mechanism. Client application is there, server application is there. So when you request, you become the client object, a client method. From the other application where you are calling, it becomes the server method. So client is the server. Like output of one becomes the input of the second. Huh? Not peer-to-peer. Through the server, like one application is in American server. The other application is in UK server. So through the server to server, we have client application, we have server application. In the distributed environment, not in the LAN environment. I'm not talking about the LAN. I'm talking about the WAN environment. Server to server. But We have client application and the server application. I think we will cover inshallah in the next lecture because it needs detail. Any question?